Every year, 160 million people worldwide contemplate suicide, and tragically, 800,000 of them do die by suicide. This means that more than 150 million people survive a suicide-related crisis each year. It's hard to reconcile that 160 million individuals a year feel and believe that death is preferred over living. Today we will explore the grief and the hope of surviving suicide attempts. I'm Jo McRogers. Welcome to Grief Support That Works. Our goal here is to do grief differently. The month of September is Suicide Awareness Prevention Month, and I have made other videos about suicide already, but today I wanted to talk about a different aspect of suicide. There is a largely unrecognized silent community who are either the family of a suicide survivor or the person themselves who still is alive in spite of a suicide attempt. So let's look first at who is most at risk for a suicide attempt. Research tells us the people that are at higher risk for suicide attempts are veterans and other military personnel, people in construction, the arts, design, entertainment, sports and media fields, LGBTQ2 youth. Then there are white men 44 to 65 years of age, and then 85 years and older at risk. There are those that are diagnosed with a major depression or a bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, substance use, and eating disorders all lead to higher risks for suicide attempts. Suicide holds such an emotional charge and stigma. When someone attempts to end their life yet lives, the shame, stigma, and judgment can drive them, their families, and their feelings underground. So often the friends and families are just so damn happy that they're alive that thankfulness overrides the emotions of the attempt. Yet, the most often asked question is why? Why would you choose death over life? Why would you choose death over your family? Why would you choose death over me? And the tricky part is that this is often the most complicated yet simple answer that just can't be delivered. Recently, I read a comment from a suicide attempt survivor who said that they were too scared to leave and too tired to stay. It's simple and it's eloquent and it's haunting. Often I will hear reports or statements from survivors that reflect that the attempt wasn't so much about wanting to die, but more so an end of tolerance with living. If you know someone who planned or attempted suicide but didn't die, what would you most want to ask them? Please let's share our questions below to support our grief and our relief experiences. And conversely, if you are a suicide attempt survivor, if you have survived your thoughts, plans, and actions to leave this world, what would you most like others to know about this? Your comments are needed and valued. It's important also to acknowledge how many grievers contemplate leaving this life as a statement of their pain and despair. Survivors of suicide attempts often express anger that they were rescued, that it didn't work, that they couldn't even get this right. The attempt itself can become a self-fulfilling prophecy if nobody knew that they had attempted. Sometimes the attempt itself can bring temporary relief after spending time of wondering when and how and if and where that they would actually attempt to take their life. Surviving a suicide attempt often goes one of three ways. It reinforces a commitment to live, it reinforces a commitment to die, or it creates the staying in a place of numb, which can leave people vulnerable to unhappiness, lifelong unhappiness. My experience and research has identified the following thoughts as important to support a survivor after an attempt. And please note, these are actually the same guiding principles that grief needs. So first, be careful to not draw any conclusions about someone else's experience. Supporting a suicide attempt survivor can be scary. Being a suicide attempt survivor can be scary. Know, therefore, that an ever-present theme might be safety. Is it safe to talk? Is it safe to be alone? Is it safe to turn inwards? Who is safe to trust? Can I trust my own thoughts and my own judgments, both on the attempter's part and the supporter's part? Also, while you may never understand what has happened, it needs to be just full on respected. Both the survivor's perspective and the supporter's perspective needs to be respected. Also, please don't assume that the risk is over. Don't assume that the goal is to eliminate the risk. The goal is to add tools and to support. Please don't try to fix this, but do try to just be present. Eliminating the stigma and the judgment, I believe, is the pathway to reduce suicide attempts and risk. And finally, know that the aftermath of a suicide attempt is not linear for either the attempter or the supporter. So having explored all of this, where is the hope? Well, according to a Harvard study, 9 out of 10 people who attempt suicide and survive will not go on to die by suicide at a later date. This number speaks of tremendous hope. But I still believe that unsupported grief risks becoming trauma, so please know that the work needs to be done. The Canadian Association of Suicide Prevention has an amazing resource page that offers suggestions of how to support a suicide survivor, and the link is in the description of this video and in the comments below. And please, if you know of other resources, please make them available in the comments below. I'd like to finish today with a poem written by Meggie Royer.
The morning after I killed myself, I woke up. I made myself breakfast in bed. I added salt and pepper to my eggs and used my toast for a cheese and bacon sandwich. I squeezed the grapefruit into a juice glass. I scraped the ashes from the frying pan and rinsed the butter off the counter. I washed the dishes and folded the towels. The morning after I killed myself, I fell in love. Not with the boy down the street or the middle school principal, not with the everyday jogger or the grocer who always left the avocados out of the bag. I fell in love with my mother and the way she sat on the floor of my room, holding each rock from my collection in her palms until they grew dark with sweat. I fell in love with my father down at the river as he placed my note into a bottle and sent it into the current. With my brother, who once believed in unicorns but who now sat in his desk at school, trying desperately to believe I still existed. The morning after I killed myself, I walked the dog. I watched the way her tail twitched when a bird flew by, or how her pace quickened at the sight of a cat. I saw the empty space in her eyes when she reached a stick and turned around to greet me so we could play catch, but saw nothing but sky in my place. I stood by as strangers stroked her muzzle and she wilted beneath their touch like she once did for mine. The morning after I killed myself, I went back to the neighbor's yard where I left my footprints in concrete as a 2-year-old. And examined how they were already fading. I picked a few daylilies and pulled a few weeds and watched the elderly woman through her window as she read the paper with the news of my death. I saw her husband spit tobacco into the kitchen sink and bring her daily medication. The morning after I killed myself, I watched the sun come up. Each orange tree opened like a hand, and the kid down the street pointed out a single red cloud to his mother. The morning after I killed myself, I went back to the body in the morgue and tried to talk some sense into her. I told her about the avocados and the stepping stones, the river and her parents. I told her about the sunsets and the dog and the beach. The morning after I killed myself, I tried to unkill myself. But I couldn't finish what I started.
If you are a suicide attempt survivor yourself, or someone you care about has survived a suicide attempt, I send you kind thoughts, kind words, and a kind heart. Thank you for your time and take good care.